Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Luening, Horst Luening. I'm the master taster of Whisky.com, and today we are again at the frequently asked questions, episode 4. And I collected again questions from our social media. And there's a user called Art in our forum on Whisky.com, and he has 2 questions. The first is, how is whiskey's age regulated and supervised? Is it? What stops a distillery from putting out 8-year-old whiskey as a 15-year-old? Good question. That's not completely unregulated. There is a law. No, it's not a law. It's a regulation, a British regulation, and the last time it was revised was 2009. And in this regulation, it is said that a whiskey has to be stated with the age statement on the label, and you have to state the youngest whiskey in the bottle on the label. And you're not allowed to write down an average age of a whiskey. So there's half 3 years and half is 6 years. Then you're given an average of 4.5. It's not allowed, as well as it's not allowed to advertise with the oldest whiskey in it. So you can add a drop of 60-year-old in a bottle and can tell you, the customer, there is 60-year-old whiskey in it. Just a drop, so on a cask, not on a bottle. This would be true, but it is, with these regulations, illegal to do so. It's very plausible. The best supervision is done by publicity. So if you have a distillery with a workforce of 16 men of 10, or well, at least 5 or 4, then there might be, well, some change in the workforce. And if you fire a guy who has stolen something, then this guy can tell you, well, sir, I know something, and this is not very favorable for you. I know that you have cheated with the casks. And then he can't fire him. So the proprietor of the distillery will be very cautious not to cheat people with the knowledge of the workforce, because it would be spread in public sometime in the future. Well, have a look at Volkswagen. Yeah. And the Scottish whisky industry has a lot of different distilleries, and there is a constant move of the workforce between them, and there would be a leak. It's not as in the automotive industry, where you only have a very few big players. No, so there is a lot of publicity going on. But if you have very small companies, just one employee, just the entrepreneur himself, he might fill a cask and write the wrong on the label. There was nothing which hindered him. And I heard from Michael Urquhart, who is the leader of Gordon & MacPhail, the most important independent bottler in Scotland, and he said in an interview, I haven't found it on YouTube again, that there is a certification of bottlers ongoing, and there you have to prove, like an ISO certificate, that all papers for these bottles, for these casks are present. And then there will be from time to time an audit looking up all those papers. And then you have a certificate and stamp, everything's okay. So if an independent bottler says, well, this is a good idea, then I think there might be, with the very small independent bottlers, there might be an issue. No idea if it's true. Well, and I talked to some of the bigger ones, and they said, well, there is this regulation that we have to be certificated, probably, but the process is very, very slow. And the main direction of this certification, these audits, is going to India, because the new rules for single malt whiskey, single malt Scotch whiskey, say that single malt Scotch whiskey has to be bottled in Scotland, but blended whiskey, blended Scotch whiskey, may be bottled outside Scotland. And there's a lot of Scotch whiskey bottled in India and not from or by British companies. So it's local English companies bottling and selling under the Scotch label. So and there you need the certification. And if there is no certificate, then the Scotch Whisky Association will interfere and look after that company. So it is, well, the Scotch whisky industry has to lose if its name is, well, is watered somewhere in the world. Yeah, so the most important thing is that employees are changing between companies, and that the company is not too small, that there are always more than two eyes on the casks. Then it won't happen. I heard rumors that there are some independent casks out there, typically the very light old independent bottled whiskies, where old casks were not overpainted. The writings on the ends of the casks telling from which age and which distillery were not overpainted, but the cask was then refilled by something younger. So I can't tell you if those rumors are well funded or not. No idea. But the thought that there is a single person, a single broker, without the 4i principle. Yeah. So the question, how it's supervised, is, yeah, you have to ask these questions, and the only answer is don't buy from two unknown independent bottlers. Yeah. Second question. To my knowledge, the proportion of non-age statement whiskies has never been higher than today. Many people take this as a sign of low stocks at distilleries and a decreased overall quality of whiskey. Would you say these two are correct conclusions or not? Well, quality of whiskey. Can tell half an hour about that. In former times, 2 decades ago, 2-3 decades ago, quality was very limited in Scotland, I'm afraid to tell. There had been power shortages out on the islands where, well, you weren't able to empty the wash bags, where you weren't able to mash your malt, and the malt started to rot, and the mash was, or the wash was too old and there were vinegar bacteria in it. I once had a whiskey very, very sour, pH 3.5, from a well-reputed distillery, but that wasn't a good one because there were vinegar bacteria in. And then people didn't like to climb into the pot stills and remove the pot ale. The pot ale it's quite poisonous. So they just went in when it was really time to go in and not preemptive. So quality was, or the malting floors, the cats were in, and a rotten mouse was the best thing you could have. There were even worse things in the malt. And mold was in the malt. And so it wasn't that easy, and because it was so much of manual labor, there were faults in the whole process on every scale, everywhere. And these errors didn't add up, but there was probably an error in every cask. Then things changed. Now there are cleaning equipment into every washback, into the stills themselves. So quality has risen a lot just by the processes, by improving the processes with which you produce your whiskey. And then the casks. Today, with globalization, it is much, much cheaper to move casks all around the world, and to tell that casks are becoming more and more expensive and they use old ones and so on is not always true. Sherry cask became a lot more expensive. But if you add up transportation costs and the sales price of used bourbon casks from the US to the distillery in Scotland, then prices dropped because transportation reduced the price a lot. And now you can transport complete casks, not only staves, which you have to add together with manual labor, because manual labor was less expensive than the freight rates from the US to Scotland. So casks were improved, and with the improved casks there is a lot. Well, the casks bring 60% more or less of the taste in a whiskey, and better casks result in better whiskey. So the casks are now manufactured in the US automatically, and there are cameras looking for bad spots in the staves. There's not only a man looking, and if it's Monday morning, well, just okay. So there is a improved quality in the production of casks. So a very lot has done. And so I would say the quality of whiskey increased a lot over the last decades. A lot. Now there's the amount of whiskey, of malt whiskey, which was bottled as single malt whiskey. In former times it was just 3%. Today we're around, I think, 10%. So we take out of the malt whiskey casks 3 times as much single malt whiskey as before. Has the quality risen 3 times? Are now 3 times more? No, that's not the right question. Are today 3 times more better casks than 20 years ago? I don't know, but I would say I think so. Because during the selection process, there was always a man or a woman, most often a man, present, and he sniffed at the whiskey and said, well, okay, oops. Well, there was a man in between, and people are making errors. Or they were sampled, good, bad, good, bad. And the one who has to assort the casks took out the wrong one. Put 2 good ones aside and 2 bad ones into the batch. Shit happens. Sorry. Shit happens. All this manual labor tends to be faulty. And it's not the wisdom and the ability, the craftsmanship, the artisans, all that which brings out the best whiskey in the world. This is quite a fairy tale done by marketeers I do not like at all. The massive amount of work, of automation, of looking after the processes, looking after the error, this was what helped the Scotch industry to build up a better reputation. This is it. Not the right time when the spirits comes down into the still house and he turns the knob at the spirit safe. This is the right time. No, there are better temperature measurements and better density measurements and better flow inside the spirit and sample safe. There are better tables. They have to look up the tables. They have to write down the values so they can be controlled. I said, well, I'm going to lunch now, 10 minutes to go. No, just open over lunch. Never again today. So this is what really increases quality of whiskey. So whenever I hear the saying whiskey was better in former times, I do not really believe in that. So this is overall quality. The stocks at the distilleries, we see less aged whiskies with an age statement on it. This 18-year-old Cardew, this Bowmore 12 years old, and oops, the Glenmorangie Dornoch has no age statement. Well, and this one costs twice the money of this one. No age statement on it. How old will it be? Nobody tells. So I have to say 3 years and a day. There will be more, but you're not allowed to tell how old this whiskey is. And as soon as there's somebody mixing a fresh, intense cask into this whiskey with 3 years, then it's 3 years. And we have to say that there are a lot, really a lot of very good no age statement whiskies on the market. And if you decided for yourself that you will never try a no age statement whiskey again, that you definitely want to have an age on the bottle, then you lose so much. A few examples: Lefroy quarter cask and triple cask, Ardbeg Ugadal and Corryvreckan, Kalila Moch, Bowmore Springtide, Bowmore Devil's Cask. All those whiskey I told you are peated whiskies. And the peat smoke is covering the youngness of a whiskey. So there are whiskies which are preferable at a younger stage or state. All these metallic youngness, youthness I'm feeling in my mouth during my tastings, they are covered by the smoke from the peat. And then the young spirit together with the intense peat bring a very, very good and excellent tasting experience. So here you won't miss the young whiskies in those bottles, because the older ones, well, the older smoky whiskey becomes, the more the peat level reduces. It is oxidized. Yeah. On the other hand, there is the Glenlivet Founders Reserve. No age statement, no smokiness, and there you can really feel this whiskey is young. Compared to the 12 years old, I, for me personally, think that the 12-year-old is a lot better. than the 10-year-old. But Cardew, Amberrock, or the special cask, I think they are better than the 12-year-old, because there's so much 12-year-old on the market. And for these Amberrock and Selected Reserve, or however it's called, the whiskies, well, are really selected. And especially the casks are selected. Or the Tullibardine Burgundy finish, one of the very, very best. Better than the 1993 from Tullibardine. Or the Tomatin Legacy. A whiskey to die for. No age statement on it. So if you leave out or leave the NAS whiskies aside, as this question suggests, will do your personal taste no good. No. Is there more 12-year-old whiskey on the market today than before? But the 12-year-old whiskey is spread on so many more connoisseurs worldwide. So I think that the amount of 12-year-old whiskey is still there. But because of all those people around the world wanting to taste these 12-year-old whiskies, it is less in your personal surrounding. And then prices rise, of course. So I had once the chance to look on storage data of the Scotch Whisky Association, and there you could see there was a big amount of 3-year-old, and then the amount of 4-year-old went down to, I say, 5% of the 3-year-old, and then the 4-year-old a little more, the 5-year-old even a little more, and then 7, 8 going up to again 10, 12 years old. There we're able to see how much 12-year-old whiskey is there on the market, and the 4, 5, and 6-year-old is quite low in the volume in the warehouses. Well, this might have changed over the last 5 years, or will have changed. But I think the amount of malt whiskey demanded from all around the world is so growing that the aged whiskey in your surroundings is no longer that big as before. But the overall output has risen until 2012, I think, to 3.5 billion pounds in revenues and 1 billion bottles worldwide. And from this comparison, 3.5 pounds per bottle without tax, without VAT, okay, shows that most whiskey is sold as a blend with 3 years old, very, very, very cheap. There you have seen the reduction worldwide to the year 2013 with the anti-corruption regulation in China, and 2014 again down, but only half the amount as before. And in the meantime, the malt whiskey has risen again 10-15%. So this is the big demand. Quality of the casks have risen also, because there are much more wine casks on the market than a decade ago. A decade ago, you had to fight for the sherry and pot cask already. The Madeira casks were that small in amount, and today there's this Burgundy, as I said, all those Italian wine casks, especially the Marsala from Sicily. They're even from Hungary, the Tokaji casks, and. And as long as you use the same grapes for the production of the wine as the port or the sherry uses, then the results from those wine casks would be very comparable to the sherry and port cask. And you have younger, you have fresher casks with more aroma to give to the whiskey. Not those old and multiple used sherry casks from Spain. No, just one season, maximum 2 seasons for the wine maturation, for the barrique maturation, and then it goes to Scotland, and then there's still a lot in the whiskey. There are 2 things in the casks. The natural ingredients, which bring vanilla, caramel, tannins, spiciness, and so on. And the second is the sherry or the port or the wine from inside the porter's walls. And typically the people think the longer a sherry matures in a whiskey in a cask, then the sherry cask would be better. No, the opposite is true. You're able to fill the walls of a sherry cask in 1 or 2 years with all the aroma a sherry can bring, but the sherry also extracts, like the whiskey, the good things from the cask walls. So a too old sherry cask is no good. Fresher casks bring more aroma. And from this, with all these young wine casks pressing into the whiskey industry, there's a lot of very, very good whiskey on the market. Yeah. The next question from a user called Seamus Mac on YouTube. I haven't found him again, I'm sorry. So the first question, can you define the individual characteristics relating to them? I can't remember what it was. Cask, pot still, whatever. Comes time. Comes more videos. Which whiskies provide the most value for money? Good question. This depends very much on your available money and your ability to taste. If you're not able to taste a lot of these olfactory substances, then, well, your money might be spent better for other things than whiskey. If you have an average tasting experience and possibility, then typically the whiskies between 30 and 40 euros will have the best price quality relationship. If you look at the stars given in our whiskey database on Whisky.com, then the best whiskies are typically liter bottles, because you're getting 30% more, but they cost typically 5 to 10% more. So liter bottles of, well, quality whiskey, but not too old, not too fancy, say Famous Grouse or Four Roses Yellow Label. Those show the best quotient between price and price per unit and quality stars. So if you have to look after every euro, pound, dollar, then you have to go for those bottles. If you are able to spend 10 more, then go for the 30 up to 40 euro, dollar, pound bottles. With those, you also lose the liter bottles. This increased the prices even more. So this 12 euro bottle, the half a bottle, small one, is extraordinarily expensive. And if you look down to the miniature, then it's incredibly expensive. The price per liter, which has to be specified to the new EC regulation, in every shop, in every online store in Europe, wherever they are, is incredibly high. You pay 150 and 180 euros per liter if you buy that small. Of course, there are fixed costs on those. No? Here, the price is still at 70 per liter, 80 per liter, and in a 0.7 liter bottle, then you're around 60, 50 per liter, and the liter bottle you're around 40 or something like this. So it depends on the size very much. So try always to find the biggest bottle available. But there are those magnums and Girobam and how they are all called, with 3 liters or 1.5 liter, 3 liter, 4.5 liters. They typically, you have to pay an extra for those extraordinarily big bottles. So up to a liter, it's getting cheaper per liter. Which ones are those? This was the question. Really, give names. So I personally think I just took out a few in this price range, like Glenfiddich 15 and 18, Bowmore 12 years old, like this one, Aberfeldy 12 years, Abelauer 12, 15, 16 years. Really a big assortment of Abelauers. Dalmore 12 years old, Lefroy 10, Highland Park 12, Springbank 10, Talisker 10. These whiskies show a very, very good price-quality relationship. If you go over to Islay, then the price relationship for a few distilleries rise extraordinarily. So Bowmore still has a lot of 12 years old to sell. At Ardbeg, the 10-year-old is 50% more expensive. At Lagavulin, the 16-year-old has risen in price sharply. So everywhere the prices, or everywhere at the Islay distilleries, the prices are rising because the demand for whiskey from Islay is so high. It's rising from day to day. If you're going up in price, the relationship, the quotient is getting worse very, very fast. So if you look at 70, 80 euros bottles, then the quality gain is only 10 percentage stars. So it's not that, well, you have to afford it. If you look at the Black Bowmore for 4,000, is this one really 100 times better than a Bowmore 12 years old? No, can't be. Can't really be. It is a lot better, yes, of course, but 100 times, no. If you look at the Springtide for 200, is it 10 times better than the 12-year-old? 2 times better? Of course. 3 times better? Maybe. 5 times better? 10 times better? Never. So you can see there is inside a price range the chances that you can gain more quality for a few euros, dollars, pounds. But changing the price range to higher value bottles typically does not bring that much more rewarding taste than the prices rise. If you can afford it, do it. The better the whiskey, the better. There are people on in the scene who say life is too short for bad alcohol. I don't want to tell you that there's bad alcohol in any whiskey. No, the official definition of quality, trace elements and so on. No, everything's okay, but bad alcohol in terms of not that well tasting alcohol. So, and some people say, well, the most expensive is just good enough for me. Well, and there, because those people exist, you can't find enough of the older bottles. They buy them regardless what they are costing. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned, there's more to come, and if you would like to tell or to ask your questions, please do so with the hashtag Whisky.com on every social media we have in our vlog and our forum on Whisky.com. Thank you.